Natalie Westwood was born into a world drenched in wealth, opulence, and perfection, or so it seemed from the outside. She was the only daughter of Jonathan Westwood, a multi-billionaire tech mogul whose name carried weight in boardrooms and governments alike. From the moment she arrived, she was destined to be the Westwood legacy's crown jewel. But fate, cruel and indifferent, had other plans. When she was just 6 years old, a reckless driver ran a red light and slammed into the Westwood family car. Her mother died on the spot, and Natalie survived, but at the cost of her ability to walk. The damage to her spine was irreversible. And from that moment on, the little girl who once danced in the garden was sentenced to a wheelchair. At first, the sympathy was overwhelming. Her father poured resources into her recovery, built her a therapy wing, hired the best surgeons and specialists in the world. But eventually, when progress stalled, so did the attention. Her father drowned. His grief in expansion, new companies, new deals, new zeros on checks, and Natalie, she was left with nannies and nurses in a mansion too large and too cold, with only the humming sound of security gates closing each night as a reminder that she lived in a fortress beautiful, protected, and suffocating. As the years passed, the world outside continued to move, but Natalie stayed in place, literally and emotionally. Private tutors educated her, but she never had classmates. She was always the special girl, the one people smiled at but never invited. She watched the world have friendships, first loves, heartbreaks, road trips, adventures, while she learned to navigate ramps, missed dances, and listen to laughter that didn't include her. By 24, she was brilliant, stunning, with ocean blue eyes that held galaxies of pain, and yet invisible. Her beauty didn't matter to the men who feared commitment. Her intelligence intimidated, and her surname attracted only opportunists. Suitors arrived dressed in polished shoes and tailored intentions until they realized she couldn't walk. Then they vanished, one by one. They'd pretend it wasn't because of her disability, but she always saw it at the moment their gaze shifted from curiosity to apology. So Natalie stopped hoping. She put on the armor of sarcasm, wrapped herself in designer labels, and moved through life as if nothing touched her. Until one stormy evening, everything changed. Her custom electric van broke down on a desolate road outside the city while returning from a solo trip to a local art gallery. Her driver stepped out, tried fixing it, failed, and called for a tow. That's when Liam Carter arrived. He wasn't on time, he wasn't clean, and he definitely didn't look like someone who belonged near a Westwood. With greased hands, a toolbox that had seen better decades, and a truck that coughed more than it drove, Liam pulled up and stepped out. Natalie watched from inside, expecting him to fumble or react, but instead, he just knocked on her window and smiled. "You okay, miss?" he asked gently. "Looks like your ride's having a rough night." He didn't even blink when he saw the wheelchair. No awkward silence, no pity, no forced sympathy. Just a guy doing his job with a quiet kind of respect that Natalie hadn't felt in years. He fixed the issue in less than 30 minutes, explained it in plain English, and even joked that her van was fancier than anything he'd ever driven. She smiled, a real one. It surprised her. When she asked for his card in case she needed help again, he scratched his head and said, "I don't have any, but you can call the garage. Carter's Auto. I'm usually there, unless I'm under." Something that night she couldn't stop thinking about him. Not because he was extraordinarily handsome, though his messy brown hair, rugged jawline, and kind hazel eyes didn't hurt, but because he didn't treat her like a project. She felt normal, important, but not because of her last name. A week later, she drove to the garage, claimed her brakes were making a sound. Liam looked skeptical, but didn't question her. She stayed for an hour, then two, watching him work, cracking jokes, telling him about her favorite books. He listened. Really listened. She came back the next week. Then again. Over the next 2 months, Natalie found herself visiting Carter's Auto more than any other place. And Liam, he never pried, never asked for details, but slowly began letting her into his world. She learned he inherited the garage from his late father, worked 12-hour days, didn't have much, but loved what he did. They talked about everything: how she wanted to learn to paint, how he loved building things, how they both hated cold coffee. Natalie found herself laughing, crying, feeling things she thought she'd locked away forever. It terrified her. Because the more she let herself feel, the more she realized this wasn't just friendship. She was falling, deeply, desperately, and dangerously. But of course, the world noticed. Paparazzi caught her van parked outside the garage, blogs speculated, headlines screamed, CEO's disabled daughter sneaking off to shady mechanic. Her father called her into his office, furious. "What are you doing, Natalie? This boy, he's not for you. He's after your name, your money. Do you think he actually cares about you?" She didn't respond. Not because she agreed, but because a tiny voice inside her, a voice shaped by years of abandonment, whispered, "What if he's right?" So she stopped going. She stopped texting. She shut down. Liam didn't chase her. Not because he didn't care, but because he believed love wasn't something you begged for. It had to be free. Weeks turned into a month. Natalie felt like she had ripped a piece of herself out and left it somewhere between tire stacks and oil drums. But how could someone like her belong with someone like him? He could walk, run, build, lift, and she could barely roll across gravel without help. The world would laugh. Her father would disown her. And worst of all, what if she gave her heart and he left, too? Everyone always left. So she chose silence. Safe, numb, empty silence. But one afternoon, while scrolling through social media, she saw a post from the city's annual charity gala. There, in the middle of all the usual glitz and glamour, was a photo of a unique mobility device, handcrafted bike designed for people with limited mobility. It wasn't medical, it wasn't clinical, it was stylish, sleek, beautiful, and attached to it was a small golden tag. Her heart stoked. "Read, for the one who reminded me how to build more than machines." Elsie, her breath caught, her chest ached. She knew, she just knew. It was Liam, her Liam, the man she ran from, was still thinking of her, still building for her. That night, she stood by the window, staring into the city lights, clutching her phone. Her fingers hovered over his name. She couldn't do it. She wouldn't, until she remembered the way he looked at her, not with pity, not with fear, but with admiration. Like she wasn't broken, like she wasn't disabled, like she was whole. It was the night of the city's most anticipated charity gala, where the elite mingled. Photographers flashed, and every outfit was more about power than fashion. But Natalie wasn't there for appearances this time. She wasn't there to be admired or pitied or whispered about behind champagne glasses. She was there for one reason, and one reason only, to see if it was really true. If that hand-built mobility bike displayed under the gold velvet curtain had really come from Liam Carter, the mechanic who had once looked at her like she wasn't broken. The man who made her laugh in grease-stained jeans and gave her space to be herself in a world obsessed with perfection. She moved through the crowd, ignoring the clicks of cameras and the sideways glances of people who still thought of her as poor Natalie in the chair, her heart pounding against her ribs harder than it had in years. And when the announcer finally stepped onto the stage to introduce the final auction item, a hush fell over the hall, a spotlight clicked on. And the crowd gasped as the curtain dropped to reveal the creation sleek, custom-designed, a mobility bike that looked like a sculpture with motion, forged from polished titanium and rich dark leather. With adaptive handlebars and a control system that responded to minimal hand gestures, it didn't look like a medical device. It looked like freedom, art, and rebellion all fused into one. And etched on the side was a simple brass plate that read, "For the one who reminded me how to build more than machines, LC." And just like that, she knew it. No more guessing, no more second guessing. It was Liam. It was her Liam. The man who hadn't chased her when she left because he respected her choice but never stopped believing in what they had. The man who could have faded into the background but instead used his gift to create something that wasn't just about her. It was about everyone like her. Everyone who'd been told they couldn't live a full life. And now here he was. Somewhere in this building, maybe standing in a corner or outside, because he never liked being under chandeliers, and her hands began to shake as emotions flooded her like a broken dam. She whispered to a staff member, asked where the creator was, and they pointed toward the back hallway near the loading docks. And she rolled her chair faster than she had in months, her mind racing faster than her wheels, thoughts spiraling. What if he was angry? What if he'd moved on? What if she'd broken something that couldn't be rebuilt but when she turned the corner? There he was, standing alone in a borrowed suit, hair slightly combed, but still messy. His boots replaced with worn dress shoes that didn't fit quite right, and a wrench peeking from his pocket because he never went anywhere without one. Was staring at the floor, unaware she was behind him until she whispered, "Liam," and he turned, his eyes widening for a second before softening into the kind of smile that had once made her forget she was in a chair. The kind of smile that said, "I see you, not just physically, but completely." They stared at each other, the silence thick but not uncomfortable, like a conversation they'd already had 100 times in their heads, and then she spoke. Again, voice trembling, "You built that for me." And he stepped closer, his own voice steady but filled with emotion. "No, I built it because of you, for people like you. You showed me what real strength looks like, Natalie. You didn't fix Karzu, fixed me." And her eyes welled with tears, the unshed pain and regret bubbling to the surface. "Why didn't you come after me?" she asked, the question heavy with vulnerability, and he shrugged gently. "Because you deserve someone who stays, even when you're pushing them away. You deserve someone who waits for you to be ready, not someone who rushes you." And at that moment, she realized that no one, not even her father, had ever loved her like that. Not unconditionally, not quietly, not with patience. And she moved closer, reached out her hand, and he took it without hesitation, the roughness of his fingers grounding her in the moment. "I'm ready," she whispered. "I'm tired of pretending I don't need anyone. I'm tired of running from what I want. I want you." And he smiled, then leaned down slightly, resting his forehead against hers. "Then we'll build something." Piece by piece, and just like that, everything changed, not with a kiss, not with a grand gesture, but with a decision. A mutual understanding that they would face whatever came together. The media frenzy that followed was inevitable. Of course, the world couldn't understand why the daughter of a billionaire would fall in love with a mechanic. Headlines screamed, blogs speculated, her father raged. But Natalie didn't care anymore. For the first time in her life, she wasn't hiding. She brought Liam to charity events, rolled into his garage during lunch breaks, and even helped him. They started a foundation that offered custom mobility devices to underprivileged children with disabilities. It wasn't about proving anything to the world, it was about healing, growing, and loving in their own way. People called it crazy, unrealistic. A phase, but love doesn't need approval, it only needs truth. And in the small garage where it all began, surrounded by tools and half-built dreams, Liam proposed, not with diamonds, but with a ring he made from spare engine parts and a single blue sapphire that matched her eyes. And she said yes, with oil on her fingers and tears in her eyes, because she finally understood that her life didn't have to be what everyone expected. It just had to be hers. They didn't ride off into the sunset, they rolled, one hand on the wheel, the other in his, building a life that wasn't perfect, but perfectly theirs. And, to this day, whenever people ask Liam how he managed to win the heart of a billionaire's daughter, he just smiles and says, "I didn't fix her. I just loved her exactly as she was." And Natalie, she never let anyone say she was limited again. What she had now wasn't a fairy tale, was real, and real was more powerful than anything she had ever dared to dream.